So I'm with John Zerr, who's the head gardener here at Bottengoms. The wonderful job of recovering this whole landscape made by the Nashes and by Ronnie Blythe. Tell us a bit about what you've been doing in the last couple of years, John.
Right. Well, I suppose really not much for the first year because it's just about gaining that familiarity, right? I'm very new to this place, and I feel incredibly lucky that we still are so involved with Ronnie's old friends, his dear ones, who have grown so familiar with this landscape and have taken care of it themselves once Ronnie wasn't able to anymore. But ultimately, for myself as a professional, I was really keen to properly identify what was growing here and trace back the historic roots of where did these things come from. And we're standing in front of beds that are now very, very shady. And back in John Nash's days, the giant tree behind us, this ash would not have grown back then. And so it's since shaded out. So it's really interesting to see what things have survived and what Ronnie has done with this place as he's sort of very much leaned into its maturity over the years. So preserving that, and then sort of really finding out what are the special things that remain and what really needs to be cherished, and how can we add to it to really sort of diversify the garden further.
What have you found in the way of plants that have excited you? There are things that have popped up that we kind of nobody knew they were here. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I think it's very interesting how the things change, like how what excites us as gardeners, it sort of changes. Plants become mainstream, and we go through all these phases because this place, in its day, would have been chock full of rarities, things that you wouldn't really have been able to buy. You couldn't have just walked into the next Waitrose and picked it up. Things like we're standing now in front of the Nectaroscordum siculum, the Sicilian honey garlic. Now, this is a plant that, even though John Nash himself wasn't terribly well travelled, certainly not beyond the UK, but he was friends with people who were. Clarence Elliott from Six Hills Nursery and Stevenage, Cedric Morris right up the road in Hadley at Benton End. This is likely where this came from. Cedric went to Sicily to paint many, many times. He travelled all through the winters, and therefore his garden is very spring and summer focused. And so this Nectaroscordum is just as prolific here as it is at Benton End. And equally, I suppose, it's sort of, we've got plants like the Peonia dorica subspecies Mlokozowiczia. It's a real mouthful. People just call it Molly the Witch. And it's a really lovely pastel yellow peony that would have been exceedingly rare at the time, and even to this day is not terribly commonly found in gardens, but you can now get it if you really want to. But back then it would have been a lot more difficult, and this has survived since the Nash time. Ronnie wrote about it. And he said that the peony, it would flower every year reliably, but only ever one flower, and that is very much because it is now so shaded out here. But it's still there, and I found it interesting how these plants sort of they that used to be really, really rare are not so much anymore. But similarly, of course, a lot of these old cultivars, especially when we're talking about the old roses that grow here, they sort of have been replaced now oftentimes with more modern cultivars that are more fungally resistant and so on. So the ones that are able to cope with the conditions here and have really become used to the garden and grow well for us, we really want to preserve them. That goes for any plant. And so it means a lot of moving things about as well. Behind you, we've got a gladiolus coming through that again would be from the time when everything around us would have been a lot smaller and less shaded out. So it's about moving these things back to places they thrive.
So there's an element of creativity in imagining what the landscape could look like and what it did look like, but also a kind of a continuous performance of finding things, of encouraging them, of changing the shape of the garden as to the way it ended up. I think Ronnie would have been absolutely delighted with seeing the garden how it is. I mean, I think he would really have been supportive of the changes that have been made. It feels that way. We all have felt, and he felt it was an enchanted place. And is that kind of something that you're aware of as the head gardener here? As you're thinking, This is enchanting. We need to make sure that that's the case.
I mean, you absolutely feel it, right? I was quite worried when I first came here, before we had all of our amazing volunteers, without whom all of this work would be absolutely impossible. Because, for Ronnie, it was the same. He needed the help. Certainly in his later years, he did. But, like, when I came here for the first few months and I was just finding my way through the garden and discovering what was growing and what was emerging in spring, I was sort of worried. I'd never worked all by myself before in the garden. I was always part of quite large gardening teams where you can bounce ideas back and forth, and I was worried it would feel lonely. But it very much, you're not lonely here, and it really feels like how Ronnie lived his entire life, always surrounded by the ghosts of the past and the present. It feels like this is very much, this place just sort of is an extension of Ronnie's own soul, and it is entirely peaceful, and there's nothing more enjoyable than actually spending days here where you are just able to work away by yourself sometimes and really soak in this atmosphere and hear nothing but birdsong. This is what really resonates with people that come here, and this is what makes this place quite special. So this is ultimately the main thing we want to preserve. And you were talking about the sort of historic landscape that really feeds into it. So it's really good that we've got, even though we're sadly lacking a lot of historic depictions of the garden, at least John did paint the surroundings, and it does show that his eye was always outward facing, and that actually, having those vistas and the views of the surroundings were quite important to him. So this is one of the main things currently that we're trying to get back to, just clearing a bit of the overgrowth and allowing these little, allowing your eye to roam the landscape again, as Ronnie did.
Fabulous. And with spring just around the corner, perhaps it's already come here. So much is about to happen. It's always an exciting moment in the gardening year. John Zerr, thank you so much for a few moments to tell us a bit about Bottengoms and vision for the future.
Yeah, no worries, Jules.
Thank you.